right, welcome back at Titi's House Podcast. I have a guest today. I'm super excited to have you here just because Kason, I know you and Kason are friends. We met last year. I think it was it Hispanic Heritage Month?
Yeah.
When they had the art show. Okay, so I remember meeting you then.
Yeah, I know it's Hispanic Heritage Month, but Hispanics are white people. They come from Spain.
Okay,
so I like Latine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because it identifies more with like Latino
Latinos,
America
yeah.
and like Latinos and everything. Yeah,
I agree. I agree. So they haven't changed the name yet. So
they haven't, which sucks. But like a lot of us, especially like organizations and like people who do events around that time, they make sure to like distinguish because like a lot of Latinos are also Hispanic because of like the colonialism that happened with like
exactly
Spain and everything. So a lot of people still do identify as that.
Spanish.
I don't identify as Hispanic.
Neither do I. I'm Latina, so
period.
I get it. Period. Right there. So
Yes.
I want to introduce you first. This is Pato. Pato, I want to say I said local artist here in Atlanta, but Kason said you're a traveling artist.
I am. So
I love it.
As of last year, I think it's been a little over a year now. Yeah, I started traveling full time, nomadically, and it's just like honestly really changed my life.
I can tell because your look has even changed from when I met you a year ago. I
Yeah.
love it, by the way.
Thank you. It always changes.
But
Somebody just told me today. They're like, I think they thought I was like a new face. And they're like, oh, what's your name? I'm like, oh, Pato. They're like, oh,
I know
you look
you.
so different last time. Yeah. Like,
So what's the change? Because Kason told me you went back to Mexico where you're originally from, and it gave you, he was like, period of months there, and it really just opened up like a whole new, just living differently culturally, because you've been here in the States for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Since birth or?
No, not since birth. I was born in Mexico in a state called Hidalgo, in a tiny little town, super far away from the city. And my family migrated to Georgia specifically when I was 4.
Okay.
So my parents, they migrated first, and me and my brother stayed in Mexico with like family members for roughly, I want to say maybe a year. And then eventually my parents like came back for us and like helped us migrate to Georgia.
Okay.
So I lived there for the majority of my life. And then, last year I had the opportunity to go back home.
Yeah, that's what Kason says. So tell me about that experience, because I'm just interested. You've been here since young girl, haven't been back to Mexico since then.
Yeah.
How's that experience, like going back and just seeing family for the first time in a long time? I can't even, it makes me emotional because, being Latina myself, I'm from Panama, so it's like you go back and it's like, this is my roots, this is my motherland, this is where I was birthed, and it's like, it's a different experience.
Exactly.
So tell me about that.
Firstly, it was just like such a magical experience. I think like I had dreamt of that experience my whole life. My parents brought me and my brother legally, so we crossed the border through Arizona and had to like travel through the desert.
Wow.
And this is when I was 4.
Wow.
Luckily I was like with my mom, and like she had some really amazing people, men that would like carry me on their shoulders, and like
wow.
I was like 4 years old. I didn't know what the fuck was happening.
Right.
But yeah, like to be able to go back home was such a magical experience, because like family that I hadn't seen since I was like 4, I didn't even remember them. And like they missed like a huge chunk of my life. I missed a huge chunk of their life, and also like not having the cultural experiences of being in Mexico, like being raised there, not being around like the language, not being around like the traditions and the culture. I feel like I felt so weird being in America, because like my existence and like my upbringing is American, but I never like really felt like I fit in.
Yeah.
So like there's this phrase which you're probably familiar of, ni de aquí ni de allá, not from here, not from there.
Yes.
So you're just kind of like in this place of limbo where you don't feel like you fit in anywhere.
Right.
And for me particularly, like with my experience like looking so different, like I just have like very unique features, like nobody would ever like really know what I would, like I would get the question, what are you, so much. Like, I got Asian all the time. Like,
really? I don't see that, but
crazy. But that's the
like
one
I'm
I would
Latina.
get all the time.
But your parents spoke Spanish to you guys in the household because you're fluent, right?
Yes, I'm fluent.
So they didn't like that culture. Like they maintained your Mexican culture in the household. And so when you went back to Mexico, you were able to, speak to them because you definitely speak Spanish.
Yeah.
So culturally, like with your experience here with your parents, like what was the differences that you noticed, like just being engulfed in Mexican culture there, as how different was it from being here with just your parents and then being there with just, I'm sure, a bunch of family?
Super isolating,
Really?
because we don't have like a lot of like family here. In Georgia, I think we have like an uncle and maybe like some family that's like related to us but distantly.
Right.
So we call them like cousins, but
Wow,
we're
that
not
sounds like us, man.
yeah, we're not like super close,
Yeah.
and like you hear about how like the experiences in like our pueblo and like the community, like everybody's like family members or neighbors. And also I think there was like a lot of like assimilation that happened.
Wow.
Through my parents particularly. I mean, I didn't know the difference,
Right.
but like the loss of like traditions and practices and cultures, and like specifically Dia de los Muertos just passed.
Oh.
And this year was the first year that we all built an altar together as a family.
Wow. And here in the States.
Here in the States.
So you brought that back with you and said, this is something that we're going to do traditionally.
Exactly. And it's something so
lost.
interesting because my mom used to do it in Mexico because she saw everybody else do it.
Right.
But she always did it alone. It was never like a family thing for her because she didn't have like a really good like familial upbringing. So for me to like bring that back from like being inspired and seeing it everywhere, and it kind of, to answer your question a little bit, when I was in Mexico during October, Dia de los Muertos in November, you could walk down the streets and see altares, like ofrendas, like everything, right? Just publicly. Whereas like here in the U.S., you don't see that. It's not like out in the public. It's not a normal thing. So the assimilation that happens when you like migrate to another country, you start to lose like languages, practices, customs, and
food, everything. You just lose. Like for me, it sounds like you guys, like you have siblings, right? So your siblings are probably really first generation American here. I always say I'm second generation, and my kids are really first generation of being Panamanian here in the United States. But I feel like we lose so much of ourselves, and we become Americanized. Although I don't think my mom was Americanized, but I feel like we became, like my siblings and I became more American than Panamanian, just from being watered down. Like you said, you don't have the family members, you don't have nobody to relate to, and then when you meet other Panamanians or other Mexicans, like you gravitate towards that because it's like, oh, they understand me, I fit in, here's where I fit in,
they look like me,
they talk like me, they think like me. I always feel like I think in Spanish before I think in English.
Really? That's interesting.
I always feel like I'm thinking in Spanish first before I'm thinking in English. But
yeah, my experience was different, actually. I mean, I grew up in, we moved around a lot, but I grew up, I guess, a big chunk in Gwinnett County, in Norcross specifically. And Norcross is a heavily, like, Latina populated community.
That is so true. It is.
It is. But I remember, like, just hearing you say you would gravitate towards people that look like you, I wouldn't. Like, I would always gravitate towards other people. Like, and also because of, like, being in school, I was, like, in honors classes, AP classes, so a lot of those classes I was the only Latina. I was the only like Hispanic or Latina, period. So for me, I would always gravitate more towards like the Black community. And like I
felt like they were more accepting.
I don't know what it was. I never really felt like I connected with other Latinos, and this is like my exploration of like the Latina community is like coming now as like an adult. As a kid growing up or as a teenager, I never really had that sense of community.
Oh wow.
So like my upbringing was like very, very isolated. I don't know, so it was different. I never had those like friends that were like Latinos also. Now I do. Now like I'm very intentional about like the people that I have in my life and like surround myself with, and I think it's really important to like have people that look like you and like understand you.
And understand you, who you are as a person. Like, because for me, just like you, I think as Latinos, as soon as you tell somebody I'm Latin, the first thing they think is Mexican or are you Cuban? And it's like, no, there's other
Puerto Rican.
Yeah, or you Puerto Rican,
that.
and I'm like, no, Panamanian, and they're like, what? Okay.
They're like, oh, Florida,
really?
Panama,
Are you from
City,
Panama
Florida.
City? Yeah, and it's like, what? No.
Some people don't even know Panamanians are Latinos.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But we have a lot of indigenous people in Panama too.
Exactly.
When she walked in here, I was thinking, oh, indigenous, very indigenous.
Yeah.
So tell me about your exploration. Why? Because was it 7 months that you were there? I think
in Mexico, I was. I think it was 3 or 4.
Oh, 3 or 4.
So it wasn't that long.
Okay.
But I feel like I did so much. Like I will compress so much in such a little time. But speaking about like native roots and everything, I am indigenous. So my I guess lineage is Otomi.
Okay.
And like since we're talking about assimilation, I feel like my family went through assimilation twice. Both through like colonialism, but also like migrating to a different country.
Right.
So our native tongue is Ñañú.
Oh, okay.
But my parents don't speak that.
Oh, wow.
And so like while I was traveling through Mexico, like and like going to museums and also like talking to people and just like really engulfing myself into like, you know, the culture and like just the space, I found that like there was like actually government run programs that would encourage like schools, teachers, whatever, to get like kids to stop speaking their languages.
Wow.
Kind of like the boarding schools here in America with like, you know, the Native Americans.
Wow.
Like, there was a lot of violence and a lot of you know, like they were forced to stop speaking their languages.
Wow.
To the point where it became this thing where like within their own communities and within their own homes, they no longer wanted to speak those languages because it was seen as something like a poor language or as something to not be proud of, something to be like embarrassed about.
Yeah.
So my grandparents spoke Ñañú, but they didn't teach my parents.
Oh, wow.
And my mom wanted to learn. She knows like a few words here and there, but they would never teach her because like they didn't want to pass that on. So now there's this like gap between like my parents and like my generation and like the one before my parents. So like what I'm trying to do now is like try to find resources to like teach myself or even like find other people to like help
like
learn the language from.
Like a community that speaks Ñañú. Oh, wow.
And there are people like I actually just ran into a friend that I know, but we found out that we're from like the same state in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
We're like small fucking world, and her parents do speak Ñañú.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, like I love that like there's still people that speak
the language, because if not, it becomes extinct. It's just like, you know, it's true. You know. It's so true.
And a lot of languages and dialects in Mexico have gone extinct. I mean, when I was in I don't remember what the museum was. It was a museum in DF in Ciudad de Mexico. There was like this chart full of like all the languages, the recorded languages. One of them, I don't remember the name, there's only 3 known speakers in the world.
Wow.
And I'm like, if they don't teach anybody, it's gone forever.
Yeah. And that's information that's lost too, that nobody understands how to translate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
It's sad how, you know, it becomes watered down. It's, you know, we were talking about this a little bit earlier with, you know, Trump being president and him wanting to do mass deportation of immigrants out of the country. It's because they don't want us to become, you know, the master race, you know, so to speak. Latinos take over. And they want to continue to preserve their race. We're watering down the white race. They don't want that for themselves. That's why they want to push us all out. And they don't want us in their country. You know what I'm saying? So with you, I know that Kason said both of your parents, you said your parents migrating here. How do you feel about Trump being in office and what that looks like? Do you think that that's going to impact your family at all? Because if your parents don't have papers or, you know, whatever the situation is, do you think that would impact you guys and separate you guys in a sense too?
It definitely could 100%. I feel like we've been fortunate enough to like stay away from, you know, like any legal things.
Right. How do you do that, by the way? Because I feel like I know that I've had some friends of mine that they're not here legally. So they try to stay under the radar, like knowing that I can't get in any trouble. I got to make sure that everything that I do matches up, like with registering for schools and what kind of jobs you taking jobs under the table. Like, how does that impact like a family structure when you're having to do everything under the table or just out of the eye of the law because you don't want to get in trouble?
Yeah, I mean, it's so how do you say the word? disabilitating. It's so disabilitating. I mean, like, there's so many obstacles you have to get through. I remember, like, being a kid and, like, us going to, I don't know, some, like, random Mexican market, and there was, like, a little insurance person there, and they would, like, under the table help you, like, get your car registered and all these.
Wow.
But it would all be done through them, and, like, you had to pay an absurd amount of money. Like, you know, registration here is what, like, $20, and then you get your sticker, which is like another $20.
Right.
They're paying beyond like $500.
Yeah,
just
even
to get
a
car
license
registered
and stuff too, right? Because you need identification to do so.
That's even harder. Like, my mom has a license from Washington. She, like, several years ago, me and her took a road trip from here to Washington, specifically because she also needed a car to, like, take the driving test, and this is Washington State, so we drove across country
from here there. Wow.
And this was, like, we did this in, I don't know, it probably took us, like, 3 days and 4 nights.
That's a long drive.
Or 2 nights and 3, something like that. We hustled, bro. Like, it was crazy. Like, I think I low-key got arthritis in my knee because we were driving so much.
There. My God.
But yeah, she was really fortunate to, like, have community there, and, like, they put, like, bills in her name. Like, so they did this months in advance, you know, because you have to do these things.
So you have to know people.
You have to know people.
Yeah, you have to have that community of people that know what to do to kind of get by. Because if you don't know what to do, it's like you're stuck, you know.
Trying to figure it out.
To be honest, like, even with, you know, with my family, I only have one aunt that's here. Like, I don't have any other family on my Panamanian side. I have one aunt, that's it. And it's crazy because it's like, how do you get past those barriers to be able to be successful? Because this is like the land of opportunity. The United States is built on the fabric of, you know, immigrants. We're here, you know, it's a melting pot, you know, so to speak. You know, it's a big melting pot. So, like, how do you, those obstacles, like, I can't even imagine.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, if the average American who has driver's license, Social Security, everything, if they feel like they're struggling, like, imagine somebody who is undocumented and doesn't have those simple basic necessities, you know,
that you need.
Like, technically, if you don't have a driver's license, you're not supposed to drive.
No.
But how do you do that? How do you get to work every day?
Because you need to, you're in Georgia, you have to know how to drive to get around here. I'm serious, you got to have a driver's license, and you have to have a car. Because you can't get anywhere. It's like, it's not like New York City. I think that's why a lot of, like Florida too, I think that's why a lot of Cubanos are like in Florida. There's a lot of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Panamanians in New York City, because I think the subway system allows them to be able to maneuver and stuff like that. But when you're in like a rural place where there's no means to get around, and you need a car and you need a driver's license, like, how do you get past all of that? You know,
it's hard. Honestly, a lot of faith. Like, a lot of just, like, you know, desire to succeed. And it's hard. I mean, like, even with those obstacles, like, my parents aren't rich. Like, you know, they live paycheck to paycheck. But at the same time, like, if you compare their lifestyle to, like, my family in Mexico, they're way better off, you know? Like, my family in Mexico, like, sometimes if they really need to, like, they reach out to my parents for money. Like, my parents are, like, supporting them while still, like, trying to support themselves here.
That sounds like us, too. The same situation where they think we're rich, and we're like, you guys don't understand. You're richer than we are, because we are... I mean, I have a home, I have a car, you know, I have a good job, but I live way above my means, where you guys live
bare minimum.
And guess what? You guys know how to make things happen. If something happens in my life, I don't know how to make things happen like that. Not really. I'll try, but
I mean, but you do in different ways. You know, I feel like you adapt to your environment. And like I said, my parents are rich, but like you have different means. Like a few weeks ago, my aunt passed, and my parents were, like, able to, within that same day or that same week, like, rent a car, drive up there, you know, be present. Whereas, like, my family in Mexico, like, they don't travel. They don't go out of town, really. Like, it's, like, such a luxury for them to be able to do those things. Whereas, like, here you have more mobility, you have more resources. So, like, yes, it's hard. And also, like, we do have better opportunities. but you know, the systems try to like keep us down and like keep us poor, keep us marginalized, like all these things.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I don't know, like Latinos, there's like they persevere, they're so strong. I actually just did a piece. The piece is currently up, an art piece. It's currently up at Atlanta Contemporary in Atlanta. And my friend Yemi Cambron, she is such an incredible artist. She's kind of like similar to my background, where she's also documented. DACA, do you know what DACA is, right?
No, what's that?
DACA is called Deferred Action. And it's basically this like immigration program where they gave some sort of like legal status to kids that were brought over by their parents, like when they were really little. So they gave them like a social security card, and with that they were able to get like a driver's license and do all the things, and they also got what's it called, work permit. So they were able to work legally. Yeah, and that was just honestly such a huge help. I mean, if it wasn't for that, like growing up as like a teenager and also like in my adulthood, like I wouldn't have been able to like you know, do all the things I was able to do.
Under that
I did.
DACA. Okay.
I don't have it anymore because I'm going through a different legal process.
Right.
But anywho, Yemi, she's also in the same like immigrant background, and she is currently doing her MFA in Chicago. So we reconnected when I was in Chicago, and she invited me to be part of her installation. And the installation is it's called Piel a Piel, Skin to Skin.
Skin to Skin, yeah.
And she selected, reached out to 10 different artists, all of different immigrant backgrounds, so not just Latinos.
Wow.
And she asked them to create an art piece with discarded leather. So her family owns a furniture business here in Atlanta. And instead of throwing away the leather because they know it's like valuable,
right,
and it's not cheap, they like will save it for her. So it's just like these like really organic like pieces of leather that just, you know, they can't use for anything. But as an artist, like
remnant pieces that they're not able to use. Okay.
Exactly. Wow. So as an artist, like she recycles a lot of things. She reuses a lot of things. And so her idea was to have every artist create an art piece using like textiles. So like,
oh, I love it.
Yarns, thread, whatever, you know, like stuff like that. I'm currently working with beads.
Oh, okay.
So every artist was to use the leather piece and kind of look at it as an extension of our skin and our brownness.
Wow.
And it's a very political installation. I mean, like, there's such amazing pieces on there. One of my favorite ones is, I don't remember the artist, but they, like, with the leather piece, they, like, I can't even describe it. You just have to see it.
I gotta see
But
this.
they created, like, they created their own fibers. They created their own yarn. And, like, they sourced the fiber from California. And also some of the fibers came from Gaza.
Wow.
So, like, to be able to create a piece right now with, like, you know, everything that's happening with actual fibers that are coming from that land is so meaningful.
So different artists from different countries, and then using these different textiles also from different countries and making art pieces out of them. Oh, I want to see that.
It's amazing. It's up until February, so you definitely have time to check it out. My piece, so I chose this leather piece. It's probably 26 by 1 inch, so it's like long, you know. It's like a little strip. What I did was like I beaded this band that's maybe like
1 inch wide and 26 inches long.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting.
So I chose that one because when I picked it up, it just reminded me of like a spine. And we were talking about like the resilience of immigrants. And like, to me, like immigrants have such a strong fucking spine. Like our spine is what holds us up, like structurally.
It's the fabric of our being.
And there's also like a lot of nerves, arteries, veins that travel like along it. So when I picked it up initially, I was like, I don't know why. Like, I really resonate with this, and it just makes me think of a human spine. So I kind of went with that, and I wanted to kind of create something inspired by, like, the essence of a spine, but also, like, adorn it. Because, like, I feel like we should be, like, adorned and, like, celebrated. Like,
absolutely.
Especially something as meaningful as a spine. So the band that I beaded was a design that I kind of created myself with my observations of two main components in blood. So I looked at the different like components that make up blood, and I picked two. I picked hemoglobin and oxygen.
Okay.
Those are two main like elements or components found in blood. So I broke down the molecular like structure of those components, and I looked at it, and I took like some of the color palettes that I saw in like different images, but also like the structure, like the molecular structure itself, and created like my own design from that.
Wow, that's interesting.
And I can show you a picture.
Send it to me and we'll show it on the video of the podcast too.
That's so amazing.
So it was just so interesting.
It's just vision, having vision. So how do you feel like being in Mexico, you know, amongst your family really changed who you are as an artist? Like, did it change you not only as a woman and a brown woman, but as an artist as well? Like, how do you feel like those three things kind of, you know, interchange and how it changed you?
Yeah, I definitely saw a change in her art when she came back.
I know. He told me that. He was like, I seen a big change in her art when she came back. So
oh my God. There was a huge change. I mean, I started like beadwork and I had never done anything bead related. Sorry, this is the installation. So it's in this tiny little space. This is mine right here. All these are like individual pieces by artists. And then here's like a little video. This is a design I created.
Wow, that's amazing.
From like
and with beads.
Exactly. It's all like beaded on a loom. It's not playing, it's a video.
Oh, it looks beautiful.
Oh, there it goes. And then on the side, that's a leather piece. I wrote, all oppressed people will be free.
Wow.
And it just keeps going down. It's 26 inches.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Your vision for that. You know, you have to have vision to be an artist.
For sure.
You do.
Definitely have to be a vision.
That's one thing. I mean, I picked up beadwork. I met my maestro in Oaxaca when I was traveling there, and he taught me like everything I know. This was the first piece I created.
Oh, wow.
It took me 5 hours to make.
So you learned beadwork while you were in Mexico. Okay, first
and
time.
He learned from Native Americans in Arizona.
Wow.
So to like see this practice, like just traveling amongst artists, like it's also inspiring me to like want to continue like spreading that, because it's like it's kind of a dying art. Not a lot of people do it. One of my goals, like moving forward, probably into like next year, I want to start like doing classes and teaching people how to bead on a loom.
Yeah.
And I want to like offer these classes like free for like BIPOC people.
Yeah.
If like white people are interested, like sure, but I'm taxing you.
Yeah.
Super tax.
You know?
You want to learn our stuff, I'm going to tax you on it.
Yeah. So it's just like being connected back to like indigenous art forms has been really interesting for me, and it's been such a like spiritual journey. It makes you
orgullosa, right? Like really feel like, oh my God, this is where I belong. This is my people.
I think it's also like helped me connect with like my ancestors in a weird way, and it's also been I've been connecting more spiritually with myself. Like whenever I create, and like I know a lot of creatives experience this, but when I like when I'm beading, it's such a meditative experience. I like enter almost this trance, and like one of my things is like I don't remember a lot of my childhood. Yeah. But when I was working on the piece I showed you specifically for Piel a Piel, I started to like remember like childhood memories that I didn't even know existed anymore.
You probably blocked them out or just forgot.
So it's like to be able to like truly connect with myself on such a deep level has been such a treasure to me. Like that's just like so valuable, you know? So
it's the beauty of keeping your culture going, because I think that when we come to the States, we want to fit in so much and kind of become Americanized, or we become Americanized without intention, right? Because that's what you're around. But it's like you lose a part of who you really are in your culture. Your culture dies down. Even like I feel like with, you know, Kason and Sean, I think Sean's more involved in the Panamanian culture and what it is, and he's so orgulloso and so proud of it. And I'm saying that Kason isn't, and he was born there, so I think he has that birth attachment to it too, right? But I think when you get there, you'll see too, because you haven't been there
since kids.
You got your passport yet?
No,
he needs to get his passport. But it's like it's nothing like knowing that this is where you're from, and these people are your people. Yeah, I can't even, for me, I get emotional every time I get, and I step foot in my land, because I'm like, this is my motherland. This is where this is where I originate from.
So when you moving back?
Man, as soon as possible. I'm trying to retire so I can go back, because you got to have money.
Yeah.
And,
man, that's so real, though. I mean, like, there was so many tears. I cried so much when I went home.
When I go home, it's like the people.
Oh, my gosh.
It's different. It's different because I feel like Latinos, as your parents get older, you kind of take care of them. They're in the house with you. It's like a different type of culture, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like seeing that when I go home, like my uncles, my cousins, they all live on the same piece of land. They own homes right next to each other.
Yeah,
it's like that family unity that you don't experience being here in the U.S. And it's like, it's beautiful because it's like, oh, you just call the next person. Mira, necesito azúcar. Okay, yo tengo azúcar. They're bringing the sugar over because you need some sugar. Like, it's like really walking distance to your family. And I feel like I've never been able to really experience that as a Panamanian living in the United States because I didn't have anybody really around. My mom was the only Panamanian that, culturally that I knew growing up. So, and a lot of times, my dad's Puerto Rican, but I always say I am Panamanian to the core because that's the woman. I learned from a Panamanian woman everything that I know. Her culture, the way that she, thought about things, the way that she implemented things. I feel like I've learned a lot of that from her roots. And I feel like I consider myself more Panamanian. I know my dad don't like that, but it's like I can't help it. That's who raised me. That's the influence that I have.
Like you said, it's
who I am. Orgullosa. It's who I am as a woman. It's like, that's how I identify.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I know people are like, you're mixed with two different. No, I'm just Panamanian. I'm sorry. My mom raised me.
Yeah.
She was a single parent. Coming from a third world country, like you said, you come here. I mean, she had, at least she married a Puerto Rican, which gave her citizenship through marriage, but she was still a hustler. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? My dad left when I was young. She has 6 kids. We're in the house. Just seeing that hustle mentality has made me the woman that I am today.
Right.
Like, you can't tell me no. You can't tell. I'm aggressive. It's just who I am. I'm a Latin woman, so a lot of times I say I apologize in advance. Because this is just who I am. I'm not gonna.
But we shouldn't have to apologize. For who we are,
some people don't understand it.
They don't have to.
She said they don't have to. So have you been married, or since you've been here in the U.S.?
I have been married. Okay. Unfortunately.
She's like, oh my gosh, that's another. So you've been to an American?
Yeah.
Okay, so
he was Puerto Rican and Italian.
Oh, that's a sassy little mixture right there.
Not great.
Hot-headed and hot-headed.
Not great.
No.
And then, sprinkle a little bit of mental illness in there.
Oh, yeah, that could be
the perfect disaster.
Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
Well, how long were you married for?
I think like 4 years.
Okay.
We were married for 4 years.
Okay, that's a long time. So would you... For me, I don't like Latin men because they're just not my thing. Machismo, I just can't do it. I grew up with 5 brothers. I was the only girl in the house, and I was just like, I will never marry a Latin man just because just being around them and seeing how they were. They're a lot better now as adult men, but I'm just not attracted to Latin men.
Yeah.
Do you prefer, or would you prefer, as you start to think and you get older and you're thinking, oh, I want to preserve my race, my culture. Do you think about maybe marrying a Mexican man just to be able to preserve that, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Pass them languages, them hidden languages down.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't really thought too deep into it, just because being a mother isn't something that's like at the forefront of it's not something I'm like actively looking forward to it.
No, we don't do
they don't think about that either. I'm like, what? I want to be able to wear my sometime in the future, please. Just one grandkid, just one.
But that's actually really interesting to think about, and I've never thought about it because I'm very proud to be indigenous and like be Mexican.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never actually thought about it. I would say no. I'm pro interracial dating. I don't really have a race preference.
Yeah,
I don't gravitate towards Mexican men. I mean, kind of like you, I feel like it's like the daddy wound, just like trauma, just like being around it. You don't want it.
You don't want it for yourself.
I don't want it.
It's funny because people will be like,
something else.
You're Latina, you don't date Spanish men? And I'm like, no, not at all. Like, not even interested. But it's like I gravitate more towards you know, African American men.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to dating, you know, an Asian. I just ain't never
Same.
crossed that bridge yet. But I'm not opposed to that either. But
right.
it's just like I feel like they understand me more, that they can deal with, you know. If you can, I feel like you got to be able to handle a Latina because we're a little spicy. So, can handle it? Go.
Very. Yeah.
So.
No, I don't think I gravitate towards one person. I think I've been like, as I've been learning myself more, I'm understanding that for me, it's like a mental, emotional connection that is like prioritizes everything else. But you know, like relationships are like on the back of my head. Like I don't, you know, my priority is like myself, like your loving myself. Like I've really been learning how to love myself.
Oh, I love it.
Which is like crazy to say, like to learn how to take care of yourself. Like that should be something you're taught like as a child.
Right.
And like yes, fundamentals were taught, but I guess for me, like growing up, I was always a caretaker. And that's because
the
like
Latina way though.
It is.
Our parents teach us as young women, you know, if you have brothers, you're taking care of them and you're not really looking at yourself or taking care of yourself. I know I can't.
Especially as an older, you know, older
sibling,
kid. Like if you have younger siblings, and like I don't blame my parents because like my mom didn't have a childhood since she was like probably younger than 12. Like she was a caretaker herself. Like, you know, her mom like abandoned her and her siblings. Like she had to step up.
She had to step up.
So it's like that is all she knew. And like because of that, like those are also things that she subconsciously taught us. And like I think the last year that I've been traveling was the first time in my life, like ever before I was like a kid and, you know, dependent on my parents. But like when I no longer depended on them in that way, like I was a caretaker to my little sisters and then I was a caretaker to my husband. And then after that, like I was like learning how to take care of myself, but I didn't understand it. Like, you know, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I was like severely depressed, like panic attacks, anxiety, everything. So this last year, like, was the first time in my life where I didn't have to take care of anybody but myself. Like, you know, just traveling, being on the road, like, you don't have to take care of anybody. No, you just have to worry about yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to eat today.
Exactly.
I'm going to shower today.
Right. Like, I'm going to
if I want to talk to you, I'll call you today. Right. You know, that kind of thing.
And there was, like, times during my travels where, like, I would legit not talk to anybody. Yeah. Like, you know, being in a different city where you don't know anybody, like, you don't have friends, like, you meet strangers, but, like, sometimes I just don't want to talk to anybody, so I wouldn't talk to people for Cancer.
Oh, she's Sean. Yeah. He's like that too. I'm like that too, though. I'm a Virgo, and I feel like I'm like that too. If I don't feel like talking to you, I don't want to talk to you today. Just want to chill. You know, I talk to people all day long, so downtime is just me. Yeah. I'm glad that you took the time, though, because I feel like, you know, as Latin women and girls, like you said, we are caretakers, and you only have... If you're I used to come home from school, my mom would have the meat prepared, and I'm cooking the sides and making sure everybody eats and cleaning the whole kitchen. And then by the time I sit down to finally do my I'm doing homework. And then by the time I get ready to go to bed, it's like you only have a few minutes to really even digest the whole day. Yeah. You know, everything that you've done, and really just spend time in your own thoughts and, you know, just think about yourself. And it's like you don't get that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I think that it's just part of our culture and how they raise the girls to be caretakers of everyone.
Yeah. And it actually took, like, my therapist actually pointing that out to me. Wow. Like, when I came back to Georgia a few weeks ago, I, like, started therapy again for multiple reasons. But one of them is because, like, coming back here, I wasn't just coming back here just, like, hang out with my friends and, like, you know, reconnect with community. My chosen sister got diagnosed with cancer, like, 2.5 months ago. Wow. I'm sorry. And so, thank you. I was asked to come back they asked me to come back. Yeah. Partially because, like, I have the flexibility to, like, be able to work wherever, like, as long as there's internet. And, like, of course, like, that's my family. So I was like, yes, like, I'm there. Yeah. But I had to, like, be really careful about the way, like, I integrated myself back into that situation because, like, after spending a year not being a caretaker except to myself, like, not having to worry about anybody except myself, I didn't want to fall back into old patterns where I'm like not prioritizing myself, not taking care of myself, like putting other people before me. Right. Like, I'm such a giving person.
Me too, honey.
I will literally bend over backwards for people. So I had to set really intentional and firm boundaries with myself before I like made such a big decision to become like an intentional caretaker again. Because like now it's not like, oh, let me just do whatever I want every day. It's like, hey, I have to like prioritize like a schedule with 3 different people to like figure out like, can I do this during this time? Like, what do you guys need? What is my capacity? What can I do? Like, you know, there was so much like introspection and like reflection that had to go into that decision. Because it wasn't just like, you're my family, I want to help you, I'm going to be there. It was like, yes, I'm going to be there, and what steps do I need to take to protect myself? Right. Because now I've learned how to prioritize myself and how to take care of myself. But if I put myself back in a situation where I have to take care of somebody, how do I protect myself? So, like, I'm, you know, remaining true to, like, the person that I want to be and still show up for somebody else.
Wow, I like that, too. So, coming back in, stepping back in, being that caretaker, did you have to set boundaries? Like,
100%.
With them or with yourself? Do you feel like you have your own internal boundaries, and then, of course, letting them know, like, these are my boundaries. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And this is how it's going to fit in. Mm-hmm. So explain that.
Yeah, so it was actually both. And that's why, like, I reached out to my therapist. I mean, I went on a therapy hiatus the whole time I was traveling. Yeah. And, like, the first day we met, I was like, hey, I know I haven't seen you in a year. So much has happened. Right. Here's like a 5-minute recap. But that's not what I want to talk about. Yeah. My sister has cancer. They've asked me to come back. And like, I feel like just the last few years that I was in therapy, like, also helped prepare me like for that moment, because like I knew how to set boundaries. I knew how to uphold those boundaries. Like during this, you know, period of transition, we've all had to adjust. Right. And there was moments where, like, boundaries were being disrespected. And not, like, intentionally, you know? Like, there was, like, a lack of communication here and there. Yeah. And I just, like, had to reiterate and, like, hey, like, you know, hey, these boundaries are not being met. Yeah. I need X, Y, and Z for them to be met moving forward. Yeah. If not, you know, like, this isn't working. Yeah. So, like, yeah, like, I've been having to really lean into, like, upholding those boundaries that we initially set, and make sure that like everybody understands expectations of each other and of the situation.
And that's a healthy mental health space to be in, you know what I'm saying, when people understand what your want, what their wants are, what your needs are. Important. It's very important to live with somebody.
And I mean, I didn't know, like,
me, I know that.
I didn't know about boundaries like my whole life, you know?
Right.
Like, I started to realize after I started therapy in 2021 that I didn't know shit about, like, emotional intelligence. Oh. And that's because my parents
we talked about that too.
Yeah, my parents aren't emotionally intelligent. And that's not, like, disrespecting or talking bad about them at all. Right. But, you know, they come from, like, a small, tiny pueblo. Like,
they have no idea.
Yeah, my dad was, like, the type of person to, like, always say, like, therapy's a waste of money. Like, you know, you're just giving somebody your money. Just go to church. Yeah. I'm like, bro, you don't even go to church. Right. The fuck are you telling me?
Just go to church.
And you're not going, and you don't even know. Yeah, it's different. It definitely is different. You got to know who you are, how to react to things. You got to know people will trigger you. Yeah. So definitely that's important. Yeah. I think that, I don't even want to say, was my mom emotionally intelligent? I think she was. I don't know.
I think there's like a base level.
There's a boundary there, like it's a base level.
There is. And then you like
I seen her go off many a times. You know what I'm saying?
Emotional regulation.
Yeah, it was stress.
I've had to learn that one too.
Yeah. You definitely. Wow, that's crazy.
But you know, like that whole journey, honestly, I've been reflecting a lot of like what has led me to this point in my life. Yeah. And like it's really just gone back to like I guess the past like 7 or so years. Probably 6 or 7, yeah. I mean, like, through my marriage, like, there was so much abuse. Yeah. And, like, I wasn't emotionally intelligent, so I didn't even know how to navigate those situations. And, like, outside of, like, there being mental illness and, like, physical abuse, emotional abuse. There was so much abuse.
Oh,
but
wow.
my ex-husband, he also like had a number of like mental illness. Like he had depression, anxiety, bipolar.
Oh.
He also had multiple sclerosis.
Oh, wow.
So that's like a lot of where like the caregiving came in.
Yeah.
Because like when he would have like these multiple sclerosis relapses, like what would happen to him a lot was he would lose complete eyesight in one of his eyes.
Oh, wow.
It was, I think, mostly the right eye. So there was times where, you know, I had to like do everything.
Yeah.
Like down to like making sure, like administering medication, taking him to doctor's appointments, programming doctor's appointments, like doing everything for this person. On top of that, like he didn't work. He was on like permanently on like disabilities.
Yeah.
Like I was the main like financial provider too.
Yeah.
It's like doing all these things at like the age of like 21.
Yeah, that's exhausting.
Bro, it was crazy. And like,
I can
imagine.
big hearts. I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean,
hearts.
yeah, I mean, and you know, it was like a marriage to me, but like it started off with like him offering to help me because he knew I was undocumented.
Okay.
And this is where, like, you know, I started to question, like, how much
were you
taking
too,
advantage?
right? Because
like,
they take advantage of
very predatorial.
advantage of you because they know that your situation is to get a green card and to be able to live the American dream. And how can I either, you know, use that against you to get what they want? So you got to be careful with that too.
Yeah, no, it's
crazy.
tough. And like I remember being young and like that's all I ever wanted was to like go to school. And like in Georgia, I don't know if you know, but they have such like anti-immigration laws. Like Georgia State University does not admit anybody that's undocumented.
Wow.
Like you can't even apply.
I didn't even know that.
There's so many anti-immigration laws.
I'm not
here.
surprised though, because we are a Republican state.
Yeah.
Majority of the time that
so it's like things like that happens, you know. When I was like graduating high school, like I was in all these like honors AP classes, so everybody always assumed, oh, you're gonna get into a great college. I would never tell people like I'm probably not even gonna go to school. You
carried on along too with you.
So it was hard, you know. It was hard because like
you're like I'm damn smarter than most of these damn kids in here, and I can't even go to college because I'm undocumented.
And like I definitely could have, like there's resources and avenues, but I didn't like have mentors or people to look up to like guide me through those things.
Yeah, that's all about that community. And resources, like she was saying, that really, you know, as a Latin woman myself, like I always said, I want to just, you know, for people that come here undocumented that don't speak the language, is teach them how to speak English.
Yeah. Literally.
I always wanted to do that. I feel like I'm always.
I was about to say it ain't too late. What
it's
you mean?
Not too
Always.
Late. I know. I'm always, but I'm just saying because I'm always doing something. Like I stretch myself thin all the time. You can ask them. I'm like you. I want to help everybody. Okay, what can I do to help? And then I'm facilitating that. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot I'm meeting this person today. That person. I got a nonprofit that helps convicted felons as they're coming out of prison.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's like my passion. Working a job, kids, even though they're grown, thank God, podcast. I'm like, I can't keep up anymore. I got too much stuff.
She got too many Facebook friends. She keeps
Facebook
complaining about.
I need an administrative assistant. Like I'm like, I can't. I was telling him, like, when I started with the podcast, it was just my girlfriend and I had an idea, and she started with me. We had an idea that we wanted to speak to women and just to people about our perspective, from a woman's perspective, like what we go through, just life in general, you know, the things that we go through. With so much experience, you know, between the both of us. And she ended up leaving after a couple months. I was like, I still want to continue with the podcast. So with, you know, Kayson's help and just being here today, it's growing. Slowly but surely it's growing. So I love when I can have someone on. And when Kayson came to me about your story, because he was like, Mom, do you remember the artist? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I remember. And then he started telling me, and I'm like, oh, tell her to come be on the podcast.
No.
Because, you know, it's interesting, you know, with everything that's going on. I was just like, oh, I want her to come before the election, because I know that your family dynamics is just, with Trump being in office, I feel like a lot of people. I was just telling him, like, I don't even know if my papers are straight.
Yeah, because you was telling me about the dude who been paying into Social Security.
Oh yeah, there was a guy just recently that's paying into Social Security for years.
20 years, 20, 30
20
years.
some years. He goes to collect, and they say you're not an American citizen. You can't collect your Social Security.
Where my money at, sir?
How do you pay into this? Like,
how are y'all
how many
taking my
people are
bread?
going to be impacted like this? Because you don't know. There's a lot of family secrets.
Yeah.
You don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know I was born in a Panamanian hospital in the interior of Panama. And my father's Puerto Rican, and he was in the military. So
You know what's crazy? I was just looking at my birth certificate the other day, and it was mad confusing. It said my mother was Puerto Rican. It says she Caucasian and born in Panama.
yeah, like it makes no sense.
Yeah,
I
it
don't know
did-
why
it-
your birth certificate. I
it
seen
says
your birth
that. I was like, yo,
certificate
what
said
the
that
hell?
too.
That's hella
Yes,
funny.
like it's crazy because your dad's name wasn't on there. But
No.
didn't we have to go back and we had to go
I
back
got
and
the
put
original
his,
though.
you
The
got.
original one.
Oh yeah, because we went back and put your
Caucasian.
father's name
Okay,
on it.
bet.
I remember because I wasn't married at the time when I had Kason.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
just
I was like,
like,
what is going on
That's
this
not
birth
what we said.
certificate?
I don't know. That was in Texas, by the way.
Yeah,
because he
you
was
know,
born in
El
Texas.
Paso.
You're a Texas
I'm wouldn't
boy?
be. Yeah,
Oh, I
he was
remember
born-
this.
Yeah, Texas. So yeah, his dad. We were. My parents were in the military back then, so I was with my parents when he was born. But it's just like I was like telling when he was telling me your story, and I was like, oh my God, I want to talk to her to see how it felt to like go back to Mexico. After you've been gone for so long
And
then
not able to travel. It's not that you didn't want to go
didn't
back.
want
You
to.
couldn't.
You couldn't go.
Yeah,
right.
Honestly, and I also carried that weight. Like it was so
Oh, I
heavy
know.
because my parents can't go. They haven't gone back to
Wow.
Mexico since they came to this country.
Wow.
My brother hasn't gone back since he was like 5 years old.
Wow.
You know, and like my little sisters, they were born in the U.S., so they have gone.
Mm-hmm.
But also like my uncle, he migrated here when he was 18, hasn't
Wow.
gone back.
Yeah.
So like so
Wow.
much family that hasn't been able to go back, and I felt like I had like a duty to like have these experiences and just like really have the best time I could have
Yeah.
because like my parents can't, my brother can't, my uncle can't, like so many people can't. So it was like really empowering to be able to like carry their essence and like their spirit and like go home with that. And it was also just like really magical. Like I've been like joking that I feel like going back home to like my motherland really like almost altered my DNA.
Wow.
I mean, like I've always wanted to have synesthesia,
Yeah.
but after like being in Mexico and like coming back and like really like processing everything that happened and all my experiences, like I started to notice that I did start developing synesthesia.
What's
Wow.
Synesthesia is when like you're able to like have like visuals in your mind by like eating food
Yeah.
or like listening to
Remember,
music.
she said when she was here, she started as she's beating.
Oh, yeah,
she's
yeah,
remembering,
okay.
her childhood. Like I can imagine that's like maybe it was a familiar thing when you were younger.
Maybe.
That maybe you experienced watching someone do it, or somebody in her
yeah.
family that
You know what my dad told me?
What?
He said that his mom or like sisters used to send him outside to ant piles to like collect beads. And I'm
Really?
like,
I didn't
From
know ant
ants?
piles.
ant
Yeah.
piles. I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? He said hormigueros, and I was like, what do you mean? That's
Yeah,
ant piles.
ant piles,
And I
yeah.
thought he was trying to say something else. He's like, no, they told me to go to ant piles and like I would like look for little beads because apparently ants will collect random beads.
That-
And I'm just like,
know
what
that.
the fuck?
Yeah,
You didn't
like
know
you
this
never
was in
think
your
about
DNA.
And
that.
also, who had the idea to tell like, hey,
Yeah.
go look
Go
at
search
this
the
ant
ant
pile
pile.
for
Yeah.
beads? Like what?
Yeah. Wow.
Like crazy stuff, and I'm just like, what the hell? And I also feel like I don't know if it like my DNA was altered going back home or like what, but like there's also been a lot of like spiritual awakenings within myself.
Yeah.
Somebody in Mexico read my like birthday on this calendar called El Calendario Tonal, which I think is the Nahuals would use it, I think. But the Zapotecas, which is the people that are in Oaxaca, so southern Mexico, they use that calendar because their calendar, the Zapoteca calendar, was lost through like colonialism.
Oh wow.
But basically that calendar is a really fun thing for like tourists to use because it shows you like your spirit animal.
Oh wow.
But
So
I
what's
didn't-
your spirit animal?
I didn't have a spirit animal.
didn't?
That's the interesting
What
part.
the-
Wow.
Right. So he looked at my thing and he was like, you have I think he said Milianali, something like that, but basically it's like a twisted vine, like twisted together.
Oh wow.
And he told me this like creencia, like this like folk story of how the Nahuales believe that there's certain people that are going to like help heal the world. And these people, if they have el don, they have like the gift, they're
Yeah.
able to transform and like shape shift into nature.
Oh wow.
And that just like fucking blew my mind
Yeah, that's
because
Wow.
since I was like a kid, I've had dreams where like I'm not me, like physically. I'm not even a human. Like I've had dreams where like I am nature.
Wow.
Like I know how it feels like through my dreams to like be like sand and like water and air. And like these are things I can't really describe to people with words. It's just a feeling. But like to go home to like one of the most southern parts of Mexico, and to have literally this random Zapoteca man tell me that like, you know, there's this folklore and like, you know, you're very connected to like nature and elements, and I'm just like, what? Like I had like deep dived on the internet for like stories or literature or research or anything that would point me to like people talking about like their experiences with like dreams of like shape-shifting into like nature. Never found anything. So that was the first time I had ever like related to something outside of like me,
outside of
and
yourself.
like and also for it to be like this creencia that comes from like, you know, pre-Hispanic Mexico. I was like, what the fuck? And then shortly after that experience, I was in Chiapas, which is literally like the southest part of Mexico. It's by the border of Guatemala. And I met this guy at one of the hostels I was staying at, and he invited me to this like New Year's party. So it was on the 1st of January, and it was basically with the shaman. His name is Don Lauro de la Montaña, and he's like a very well-known shaman in that area. They say that like when he was young, some monks came and like sought him out and like took him to wherever, and like he like was with monks for a long time.
No, and it's probably true, you know.
But what like got
I'm
me
not saying it's not true, because you just never know.
You never know.
You never know.
But what got me and what like intrigued me was that they also like say that he's able to control like the elements. And I was like, again, mouth on the fucking floor, like how like it's so crazy. All my life I've never been able to like, you know, share in these like similarities with anybody or even on the internet. And then I go to Mexico and like it's like, oh, by the way, you know, you have this, and like here's a shaman that can control nature, and like I'm just like, what the fuck? I didn't have like time to like really connect with him, but like one of my goals is to go back and like actually like sit with him and like learn from him, and like, you know, just like have a conversation. Also maybe do like a whatever spiritual like services he offers. But it was such an interesting thing for me.
It sounds interesting.
That I was like, what is happening? But like I really feel like it just like awakened certain things in me. Like I feel very connected to nature now. Like I always like I can be like in a space around like, you know, nature, and like feel and like kind of see from the corner of my eyes. Like I call them like nature spirits. You know, just like having that ability to connect with nature on such a deep level now has like is also something that changed like within me. Another thing that changed is like obviously my art. I was talking about the beadwork. There's one other thing I wanted to tell you, but I can't remember now. But yeah, I don't know, it's really magical, to be honest. I feel like I'm going through a second puberty. The other day I was like taking a shower, and like I noticed like texture in my hair. My hair has been always like pinned straight. And I know like hair texture can change over time. But it's like it's all like happening at the same time. All these changes. So it's like to see like texture in my hair and like a curl pattern. I was like, what the fuck is happening to me?
Trust me,
you can feel the air in Mexico. It's like,
it was like,
back.
She's back. It's funny because people, you know, Latinas especially, our hair textures can be, you know, different. It's funny because for me, I always have like braids in my hair or something like that, and I'm just really getting used to having my own curly hair, which for a long time I would straighten it, or I was like, no,
that's American influence.
That American
you want to fit in.
You want to fit in with everybody. You want your hair to be straight. Like, we don't fit in. It's like, I don't know, but I'm telling you, this is my curly hair, and now I'm just like, oh my God, I'm learning how to do my own hair. And I'm 50. Like, at the end of the day, learning how to do my own curly hair, which I haven't done in years because I didn't know how to manage it. It's crazy. And then you talk about hair texture. You go there. In Panama, I couldn't wear my hair curly because it would be like, I can't do it. But here, during the winter
whenever
months,
we move to Panama, you gotta come out there.
You gotta come. 100%. Oh my God!
I'm just waiting for you to move. I'm like, when are you moving so I can visit?
Year, 100%.
Yeah, they're gonna be gone. 100%. I'm jealous too because they're gonna be there before me.
Man, we be waiting.
I'm like,
for
I'm
you.
retired.
I'll be
I've been
there
saying
eating.
to them, I'm retiring and moving back to Panama, and they're
We
like,
gonna be there.
We're gonna-
they're gonna already
retire.
be there.
I'm
We're gonna
leaving.
leave you, Mom. And I'm like, that's not fair.
You take it too long.
I'm still working, trying to retire. But
Yeah.
thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you
I
for
love your
having me.
story. I mean, I see the evolution too from when I met you. I think
Yeah.
her hair was shorter when I met her.
The
before.
sides were shorter.
Yeah,
for sure.
she had it
Yes.
shaved.
This
I
is
think.
just because I haven't seen my barber.
Oh,
I'm so
okay.
ready to cut this off.
You're gonna shave it again?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
But it
I
doesn't
love it
look
like
bad, though. It
this.
look good,
I
though.
like
Thank
it.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
I like it like this.
And you know what? People have been saying that a lot. I got my two favorite compliments today were, oh my god, they've like lingered in me. But two people today said I hadn't seen them in a year because there's like a lot of people that I just haven't crossed paths with again in Georgia. But they were like, your spirit feels lighter since the last time I saw you.
Man.
I was like, thank you for the
that feels
validation.
good.
It felt so
Yes.
good because they're right. I mean, I feel it. And like, to have other people express that and validate it has been so empowering and so beautiful.
Man, people don't know that when you are an immigrant in this country, like you lose a part of yourself, and you don't feel that connection unless you had your parents. But even though they were kind of disconnected, you were still grounded in Mexican culture, right? I feel like I always wanted to teach my kids Spanish, and I felt like I spoke Spanish at home. My parents spoke Spanish, but I never.
We working on it.
Yeah,
we working
man.
on
But
it.
they working on it though. Sean is.
Yeah, Sean there.
He's good.
You know, you got to
Kason
throw
gotta
me
get
into
ready.
throw me into the fire.
You do
I'll
pretty
figure it
good
out.
though.
Yeah, he
I
does. He
understand it. I've
understands
always
everything.
understood a
It's
lot of
funny
it.
because I allow people to convince me that
but-
he needed to learn
The
English.
hospital, military, they said you're confusing him.
Yeah, he
You gotta
had
choose
a
one.
So
speech
false.
impediment growing up, like from like 3 until like 5. And then when we came to the States, they said to me, you can't speak Spanish to him anymore.
Yeah,
and he
come
was
on.
bilingual, like he understood and spoke everything.
They
Me
was
as a
hating on the
parent, I was
kid.
like, oh my God, I'm setting him back. He has a speech impediment. He slurred when he spoke, and it was just like, all right, I'm just going to speak English. Don't ever let anybody tell you that about your
Yeah.
kids. You stick with what you know, stick with what your culture is, and
Exactly.
not, because I feel like I cheated him because he was
Yeah.
fluent, and then all of a
You know
sudden,
how many Latin shorties I would have right now?
probably a lot. But it's just like what they don't understand. Like we're so rooted in our culture. When you go back to visit your family and your friends and the people that you know back where you're from, it's just a different experience. And I'm glad you had that opportunity
Me too.
to go do that, because I can see the change. And I don't even know you that much, but I can see the change.
Yeah.
Just like when she walked in, I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I feel indigenous. You know what I'm saying? So to be able to go back and reroute your branches and, your trunk basically, and be able to come back and say, I am this new woman.
Yeah.
This is who I am. Look at me. Because I'm sure you get a lot of looks when you go out. People are looking like, oh wow, she's different.
I don't notice.
Continue. You don't notice?
Yeah.
That's good.
I mind
That
my
means you're
business.
beautiful and you're in your own space. But you look amazing.
Thank you. You're so
Your
sweet.
story's amazing. I'm glad you were able to be here. I love it. Continue to
too.
grow.
And come back and visit
And
us
come back
again.
and visit us.
Of
Yes.
course, always. And
Definitely.
when y'all are in Panama.
Oh,
Yes,
for
come visit us in
sure.
Panama. Definitely. We'll love to show you around the island.
Can't wait.
All right. Thank you at
Thank
Titi's
you.
House Podcast.